What I'd like to start with is just to allude to a slightly different paradigm, just a slightly different way of looking at things from the way that things are coming at us at the moment. So things are sort of seen very much as a war and a battle against some infective agent that is coming to get us. And that view came out of a historical perspective from a man called Louis Pasteur. And there were contemporaries of his who viewed things in a rather different way. They looked at what happened within the body, and they considered that bacteria and viruses and yeasts and molds were created endogenously, that they weren't something that came from outside. And this is where this concept of the terrain comes from. And Louis Pasteur reportedly on his deathbed said, "Je me suis trompé. I made a mistake." And contemporaries of his, Bernard and Béchamp, Antoine Béchamp and Claude Bernard, who had a very different perspective, he said, "Je me suis trompé. Bernard was right. Le terrain est tout. The terrain is everything." And so what I just would like to explore is this very different point of view. And when one reads the texts around this, it has been sort of slightly marginalized. And you know, if you read the Wikipedia entry on Pasteur, it says, you know, Béchamp lost the battle. But there definitely was a to and fro and a point of view being exchanged around this. Now, it wasn't just Bernard and Béchamp who perceived things from this perspective. If you do the reading, you can see Gaston Nazens, Virginia Livingston Wheeler, and others have observed changes in forms in the body. So I don't want to get too far involved in that. And I find myself thinking, you know, about Nelson Mandela and his move towards a new paradigm and a new light. And he only really started to make progress when he realized that by loving and forgiving his detractors, would he make progress, which of course he did. So what I want to do is just explore that paradigm a little bit before we then look at how we might test and assess, or how we might assess somebody's terrain. And then, of course, the meat of the matter, is to look at how we might support ourselves to have the healthiest possible terrain. So I'm now going to start doing some sharing of my slides, which we go to. Sorry, technical challenges for 2 seconds. So just to support this proposition around terrain, I just want us to consider in these times where everybody is absolutely focused on the germ being the killing agent, and think about Florence Nightingale for 2 minutes. You know, you can see here in this artistic representation, she's dealing with very sick, wounded, ill people, and there's no PPE in sight. You know, she isn't wearing a mask, and I think this is an accurate representation. So I'm just going to, these are thoughts just to come into our head, just to reflect on, okay? And there, she lived from 1820 to 1910, 90 years old. Great sense of connection, great sense of contribution, great sense of looking after, 90 years old, okay? So just to start introducing some images into our consciousness. And then Mother Teresa, you know, there she is helping people working in, you know, conditions which people would say were hotbeds for germs, and yet, you know, lived to 90, 87 years old. Okay, now when we look at the main dialogue around, you know, how to deal with this current situation we're in, here is, I pinpointed this news story because it alludes to the fact that we might be able to do something to protect ourselves rather than, you know, but even the word protect ourselves implies that something is coming to get us. And I would really, really like us to think in terms of putting the picture the other way around, that we need to raise our consciousness, raise our energetic level, raise our general sense of well-being. And when we think of times of plague or widespread illnesses, it's just interesting to focus on this guy who was a Presbyterian minister and vegetarian food reformer, Sylvester Graham. And there was a great outbreak of disease and challenges in America. And he was encouraging people to eat a plant-based diet and to support their health. And at this time of this plague, people came to his houses and were supported with his nutritional principles of simplicity. And they seemed to do pretty well and not be subject to illnesses. So that's a bit of background, just introducing some thoughts into our consciousness. Let's start to ask ourselves, if the terrain is important, which I firmly believe that it is, then how do we assess somebody's terrain? And the simplest way, and the way that I, you know, for many years in my nutritional therapy practice have done that, is to sit down with somebody, and we can do this even now in these times of non-social contact, and go through your medical history, go through any symptoms that you're experiencing, and just assess where discomfort may have come from in our family history, in our medical history, and how things might have been treated and suppressed, and start to support a general healing of the body. So that's a simple way. If we look at Chinese medicine, there's a nice, interesting picture for us there. But in Chinese medicine, they use very different techniques for assessing our terrain. They look at the tongue and they feel pulses. And I've had a lot of acupuncture in my life, and I found that very useful. And one of the first things that happened to me when I first started going to acupuncture was that I had a massive crack straight down the middle of my tongue. And as we can see there, that reflects the fact that my spleen was congested and my stomach had challenges. And that has changed over the time that I've been eating and drinking and living the way that I have. And that crack has started to close up in my tongue. So that's a traditional Chinese medicine way of assessing terrain. The way that I do things now is using live and dry blood analysis, which is a technique that I was taught, and I find that fascinating, and it gives us insights from in a way that other things don't. So on the left of that picture, you'll see the ideal picture that we're looking for. I've never seen that. Well, I've seen one person approaching that once. And on the right, we see how when we look at people's blood, from a drop of blood from the tip of their finger under a microscope, how that can be disrupted. And also, I use this is the dry blood technique at the bottom, and really what we want to see, and I'd say this most directly relates to terrain. We want to see that coagulated mat of dried blood tightly packed together, as we see on the left-hand side. And in many, many people's cases, what I see is pictures like we see on the bottom row on the right-hand side, which is a dark ring in the center of that sample, which implies bowel toxicity and congestion. And on the extreme bottom right-hand corner, that's quite an advanced form of that toxicity. So if you have that, then some of the techniques that you can use to change that, well, I would say generally starting with a focus on a plant-based diet, but also some forms of detoxification where you start to allow the bowel to cleanse. And intermittent fasting is a very effective way of doing that. Fiber-rich foods, obviously, with insoluble and soluble fiber, are another great way to facilitate that changing. And when I first had that done, mine was really, really congested. And, you know, that has changed over time. And what I would say is that in rebalancing your terrain, what we're trying to do, and my recent experience with clients and personally, is that it's, you know, it's not just about food. There's a mind, body, and spirit connection that we try to bring together in the healing process. So the other way that we can look at terrain is with blood chemistry. Now, this is a standard blood chemistry analysis, and one of the things that I've been doing in my work with Aisha, who runs PAR, which is a longevity-orientated business, is to use a much more detailed blood panel. And this one has 81 markers on it. And so while this picture might tell us that everything looks pretty normal, that you know, we have the right number of red blood cells, an appropriate balanced number of white blood cells, this picture starts to give us much more detail about how organs may be functioning, whether we've got congestion in our biliary tract, whether there is increased acidity in the body. And with the live and dry blood analysis, that's quite often what we're looking at. And this picture gives us super confirmation of that. And I was on a call last night where they were discussing that. That test is a little bit more expensive, but you know, we're all worth it, £350. But they're now bringing out a panel which is a slightly less than that. But in working with Aisha and working with the live and dry blood analysis and doing this form of assessment, the insights that we've been getting into people's health are quite miraculous. And I feel very blessed and lucky to be able to have seen that and hopefully help people make some really fundamental changes in their terrain. So what is it that we do? You know, if we want to change our terrain, if our terrain is disrupted, and that's the reason that we're getting sick, you know, if we're more predisposed to being ill, how do we make ourselves more well, more vibrant, more healthy? Well, there's, you know, one of the things that this period gives us the opportunity to do is to research things more and to look at things more. And we watched this docu-series of 12 programs on broadcast by Hay House. And it is I mean, if you can get it, or either get the books or watch the series, absolutely phenomenal. Kelly Turner investigated the stories of over 100 people who had been told that they were going to die, you know, absolutely terminal diagnosis. Some of them given months to live, some of them given, you know, 2 years maximum to live. And all the people that she interviewed and researched turned it round, you know, and they're living today. So in these times of despair and fear and anxiety and desperation, this is pure gold, inspiration and hope and delight. And you know, the ways that people did this have a broad range. And there's one amazing story of a guy who you know, was told he had metastasized lung cancer, and you know, without being, you know, spoiler alert, he is living today, and most of the change came from releasing stored anger about things that had happened in his youth. He worked with an energy healer, and, you know, from going from metastasized lung cancer, he moved to cancer clear. Really worth watching. But the thing, obviously, as a nutritionist, that struck me in watching this series was every single person changed their diet. And you see person after person after person getting their juice machine out and making a green juice. And or making a vegetable juice, or going to the supermarket and buying more organic vegetables. So that's why I got interested in this area, and that's how I came to it. I've been on antibiotics every day for 4 years of my life because I had acne, and the prevailing paradigm is that things that are showing signs of pus and emission are related to bacteria, and the consideration is that bacteria are causative. So I was given an antibiotic to stop these bacteria causing my acne, but the bacteria, in my opinion, were not causing my acne. And when I changed my diet radically, my acne cleared up overnight. There were also other elements to it, emotional change, being listened to, but that was the reason that I got involved in this. And that is the reason that I feel so passionately about this, and have dedicated my work and my life to helping other people to experience that change, so that they too can move from a very, very unpleasant, dark space that I was to one of happiness, joy, and leading an incredibly fulfilling life. And that's what I would like for you. So, moving forwards, one of the things that one of the biggest changes that I made, and what I really think is important, is the shift to eating a plant-based, predominantly, not exclusively, because it can be challenging and it can accelerate detoxification, but raw plant-based diet. Now, that doesn't mean cold food. A lot of people, when you say raw food, they go, but Chinese medicine says cold food is bad for the spleen. I get that. If you pull your food out of the fridge and just eat it, that's cold food. But if you pick a chard leaf in a field, it's hot when you pick it. And that's really how, as hunter-gatherers, if you read Sapiens, that was when we were in our happiest phase, one of our most enlightened phases, arguably. That is the state that we need our food in. So that this is a 2011 article in the Daily Telegraph, telling us or pointing to a research paper showing that, compared with nutritional supplements and cooked food, the level of activity promoted in liver detoxification by broccoli sprouts was massively more than taking that and putting it in a pill or cooking the broccoli. So one of the other, I had this massive shift by eating a plant-based diet, and what I really encourage people to do is to move towards eating more plants. That I hope is one of the great things that is going to come out of this interesting time that we live in, that we've seen the effect on the environment of us stopping using cars and things like this. One of the biggest impacts on ozone degeneration is particularly industrial animal-based agriculture. So but if we switch to a plant-based diet, we need to have quite a high percentage of raw food in it. And if your body reacts to that adversely, you need to move more slowly to it. And one of the most persuasive pictures that I saw, I was eating a raw food diet when I was 21. Then I stopped. It was, all too much. And then I came back to it when I was in my 40s. And this was the picture that persuaded me to do it. Because if you look here, you see the energy of raw food compared to cooked food. And this is what makes raw food alkalizing. This is what brings biophotons into our body. This is what gives us increased negative charge. This is where a lot of the antioxidants come from. And this is what makes food such a powerful, healing, connective way of improving, rebalancing our terrain. It's not the only answer. I've alluded to other elements as well, but I really feel this is the most important foundational platform to do it on. So the other thing that we need to consider is the effect of harvesting food. And we go to I go to Whole Foods and I get my green leafy vegetables regularly. And we see you know, they're on the shelf and they all look a bit floppy. And this is what has happened. This is another form of Curlian photography where we see that quite soon after harvesting food, it starts to degenerate. It starts to go floppy, you know, and a lot of the nutritional goodness dissipates in that way. So not many of us live in, you know, fields or have massive vegetable gardens, particularly if we live in London. But, you know, even in our small garden, we grow some stuff. So we've got to bring in some practical measures that will help us to keep that vitality and life force in our food when we eat it raw and make it appealing. So this is the technique that I've come up with, that if you, rather like cut flowers, you cut the bottom off vegetables when you bring them back from the supermarket, you put them in water, and then they are, you can see they're gleaming, they're fresh. You want to eat that. It's not like somebody told you you should eat that. To me, that looks like, God, please give me that. You know, I want that in my body. So that is a helpful way of doing that. Now, the other thing that, again, you know, the energetic field is really, really what's important in the foods that nourish us and rebalance our body. So here again, we've got Curlian photographs. On the left, you see a raw organic lentil sprout. On the right, you see the effects of blanching that at 60 degrees for 2 minutes. You know, it diminishes it. There is still energetic quality there, but it's diminished by heating. So the thing that I wanted, so as well as, you know, green leafy vegetables, which I feel are, you know, the absolutely most important thing that you can get into your diet regularly, along with, you know, fresh, organic, seasonal vegetables, fruit, and sprouted seeds. Because when we eat something like a pizza or bread or couscous, that is a very, very refined form of the food. And if we go back to Sylvester Graham at the beginning of the presentation, he said the less we mess with our food, you know, the less we process it, the less we do to it, the more nutritious it is. So we, you know, having seeds and nuts and beans and pulses is a really important part of our nutrition. If you go to the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida, where they're helping people reverse stage 4 metastasized cancer, you know, well, they're educating people around their diet, and some of them have amazing health stories to tell, should we put it that way. This is a huge part of what they're feeding people, is these sprouted seeds. And you know, we're going to be running courses on how to do that, but it really is simple. You need the right kit. You need a jar with a mesh wire lid, although one of my clients currently has just drilled some holes in the top of a jam jar and he's sprouting away happily. So fresh vegetables, sprouts, and then you can make something like this to go, you know, at every meal you sit down to. You need something that's fresh and vibrant, and this will change the energy in your body, help you become more alkaline. And the other thing that I believe to be the most powerful thing you can do to support yourself nutritionally is to either make a green smoothie which doesn't have buckets of powders and things like that. You might put a little bit of green powder in it, but tomatoes, cucumbers, kale, and maybe put some vegetable juice, but then you've got 2 machines to wash up. You can really quickly make a green smoothie with kale, tomatoes, cucumbers, garlic, a little bit of olive oil. I can email you that recipe, and you can whiz that up and have it with a dehydrated cracker. Or make a green juice, because juices go straight into your bloodstream. If your digestion is compromised in any way, juices, not necessarily loads of carrot juice, which might cause you a sugar spike, although there are case histories of people who reversed cancer diagnosis using, you know, I'm not telling you how to deal with any disease situation here. You need to make your own choices in an empowered way, and there is a medical framework that is firmly in place that needs to be considered. I'm just saying that these things can really help to bring you to health. So green juice, I have every single day, and that is a very powerful way of getting high nutrient, low sugar food into your bloodstream almost directly, because there's a tube in your stomach that passes through your stomach that means that you don't start digesting the juice as food. It will go straight into your digestive tract. Okay, so all this stuff about sprouts and green vegetables and all of that, but are we going to live on that? Well, maybe we could, but that might be a bridge too far, a bridge too soon. And I was listening to a presentation by Brian Clement the other day, and he was saying that they've found that if you have 20% of your, he's all about raw food, but if you have 20% of your food cooked, then that absolutely can sustain vibrant living health. So, I would start, if you're currently at 70% cooked and 20% raw, I'd just start to kind of shift that balance. But the salad I showed you, have that on the table, whatever it is you're eating. If it's a veggie sausage, if it's falafel, if it's, something you've made yourself, if it's some tempeh, just try and move towards making that the side dish and your big fresh raw salad with lots of sprouts on it as the main event. Other things you can add to that, and I've been doing some research on the blood reports I've been doing recently, seaweed. And this comes from a company called Seaweed, harvested on the coast of Britain, dried at very low temperatures, very, a family business, really, and they found, they've got some research around adding that to food, and it helping people. There's iodine in that, which will support your thyroid gland, and there's minerals, which obviously we need. Sauerkraut, you can buy it or you can make it, but a lot of people sort of say, well, I've got disturbed digestive bacteria, which after having 4 years of antibiotics every day, I had disturbed digestive bacteria. So I would use fermented foods like sauerkraut, add that to your meals, lots of beneficial bacteria, great way to help support that side of things. So that's my nutrition tips. We started with some female icons. I just would like you to consider this lady for a few minutes. Fiona Oaks, a British distance runner who holds 4 world records in marathon running. In 2013, she won both the Antarctic Ice Marathon and the North Pole Marathon. She runs despite losing a kneecap from an illness when she was 17. Oaks has been a vegan since she was 6 years old. You don't get much more inspiring than Fiona Oaks. And in these times where we may have times to watch movies, she has a movie called Running for Good. And all the proceeds from that film go to support her work in an animal charity centre where she looks after animals that have come from difficult situations. Really, really inspiring woman. And she I saw one of her recent posts. Somebody said, oh, like kind of gym monkey or something. She said, what a compliment, but any of her muscles come from the gym. It's all through working outside with the animals. Really, really inspiring woman. Do look her up and check that out. And just alluding to how paradigm shifts move and how new philosophies emerge. This film, you can currently buy it online for 10 quid. And it's a really, really interesting insight into how the objectification of women, that was not really that long ago, changed dramatically. And I really would encourage you to watch that film, because it does give us inspiration that there is hope and that things can change and that they are changing, and we're coming to happier days. So that's the end of my presentation. That's my website at the top. I work with Aisha very closely. That PAR is her business. And we work with Mikhail at the Wellness Centre at 58 South Moulton Street. My last thing just to say here is that if you want to send me an email, or Aisha an email, or Mikhail an email, there is an information sheet with some of the resources I've discussed that we can send you to keep you inspired in these times.
Okay. Well, Gary, thank you very much for this, very informative, valuable presentation. Let me see if there are any questions. Well, I actually have a question. So it's very interesting. Every time I hear you speak, there's something interesting new, so which is wonderful. One question is, there's hope. So, we may be eating a certain way, our blood might be a certain way. When we start eating healthy, how long does it take for our blood to change? And, how long does it take for, things to renew? And, any insights into that?
Yeah, thank you, Aisha, very much for saying that. And it's a little bit how long is a piece of string, because everybody is different. But in my own case, I'm sorry to be so graphic, but it is 11 o'clock in the morning. When I started eating this way, I sat on the toilet pretty continuously for 3 days. Now, I was 19, and I had the kind of resilience to deal with that. Not everybody wants to go through that, and having gone through all of that to quite an extreme extent, I then came back and sort of more gradually shifted back into where I am with it now. I think that one of the most important things that happens when we start eating more raw plant-based food is that our bodies start to detoxify and eliminate things that have been stored there for quite a long time. And the more I do this, the more I think quite often that can have an emotional connection. And so we release, stored up emotions at the same time. But it really is a question of, can our body then support that detoxification? Because we have filter organs, our spleen, our pancreas, our kidneys, our lungs, which is particularly pertinent in the current situation, because we excrete the metabolic byproducts through our lungs, through our breath, but also our kidneys have to process it. Our spleen filters unwanted blood cells or tired blood cells. So in every person's case, it's going to be different. And this is why I feel it's really important that when you go down this path, you are supported by a team or people who will allow your body to heal itself, rather than, there are certain situations where you absolutely need medical care. I have absolutely relied on that in my life. This healing paradigm, though, you do need to support it, because there may be times when you feel unwell, where you feel tired, where you feel fatigued. And so, rather than taking something to suppress symptoms of a cold or flu symptoms or headaches, you need to let your body just deal with that effectively. In order to be sure that that is happening effectively, to support that, you need to make sure you're going to the toilet every day. So if you become constipated, then, you use some licorice tea, or use something that will make sure that you go to the toilet regularly. Go for walks. If you feel running is too much, just go for a walk every day. Reduce your exposure to electromagnetic fields. But how long will it take? I really feel, and Brandon Bays, who's somebody who I really respect, talks about this, about peeling back the onion layers, because even now, I've been doing, I'm in my 50s, and I've been doing this since I was 21, and I feel even now there are things that need to be shifted. I'm noticing maybe there's some congestion in my biliary tract, and so most people, if they've been on medication for a long time, or if they're holding anger or whatever it is, that might be there. So I feel, Aisha, it's a layered process that takes time, and where you know, we're moving towards the light all the time, you know, where it's a life's work, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, thank you. And I think you've touched upon some of them, but you know, there are certain maybe discomforts that people may feel when they base eating in the beginning, and know what those are, what to expect, so that you're not just, you know, you're not discouraged by these changes. So maybe you want to touch upon a little bit more on that.
Yeah, sure. Just before I answer that, Aisha, I'm hoping, because there are a couple of people who I know are on this call, one of my good friends, Luke, and I'm sure he's got a question. So hopefully he can type that into the chat box, and you can pick up on that. Yeah, what sort of symptoms can you expect? Well, I think that one of the things that happens for me is mucus formation. You know, I mean, I think it's different for everybody depending on you know, what your where your genetic predispositions lie. You know, I do think, you know, I mean, we are absolutely the product of our ancestors and forebears, and you know, our genetic strengths will be in one area. You know, some people have a very, you know, I've been told that I have a very strong colon, and so, you know, sorry to reveal such graphic detail, but so for me, you know, going to the toilet isn't an issue, but for somebody else, they may not have such strong musculature in that area of their body, and that might need supporting more to make sure that they're defecating regularly. So some people, when they start to do this, they might become constipated, they might get headaches, they might start sweating, they might get flu-like symptoms. But really, you know, if you then support your body with Epsom salt baths, you know, maybe self-administered enemas, although, you know, that I'd start with laxatives more, you know, with things like, as I say, licorice tea, and certainly some of the magnesium. I spoke about supplements. What we do use some mineral supplements in the citrate form, and magnesium will act as a slight laxative as well. But also some of the other symptoms that people can experience is fatigue, is weakness. And one of the things that happens as you start to release acid from your body tissue is that you can start to break down muscle. Because I was reading something from Michael Greger the other day, and he's saying that, you know, where do we get the calcium that we use to buffer acids from? Well, a lot of it comes from our muscle. So actually, not from our bones. And that's the really interesting element of research around that. So, you know, one of the things you might experience is weight loss. And that might be as the calcium is drawn out of your muscles into your bloodstream to buffer acids that are being released from body tissue that have been stored over a long period of time. So helping that process with your green juices, with some alkaline minerals, could facilitate that, but that might be something that you experience. You're muted, Aisha.
Just unmuted myself. Thank you. So there are two questions. Let's cover the easy one first, because your friend Luke did raise a question. What's more recommended, green smoothie or cold pressed juice, or what is the difference between them on the effect to our body?
Well, I think he knows the answer to that. But of course, I'm delighted that he's asked it.
Oh, this is not Luke. This is actually another attendee.
Ah, right. Okay. Now, I would have been surprised if Luke had asked that question, because he was at a very, very interesting lecture that we had, that I organised at the Hale Clinic with Nadia Bryden, who is an amazing, amazing woman who was diagnosed with cancer. And we had a very, and she's now fully recovered. And we had a very special evening with her, and she talked about this very question about green smoothies versus green juice. So if you listen to Brian Clement, the director of the Hippocrates Health Institute, talking about green juice, he's absolutely adamant that that is the healing agent that everybody needs, because it is absorbed so quickly and efficiently. So if your digestive system is compromised, if you've got liver congestion and you're not producing the pancreatic enzymes or whatever it is, the buffering fluids that help your food to be alkalized and absorbed into your blood, then it could be more challenging to digest and absorb even a smoothie. What Nadia, sorry, hang on. So juices, he would say they are, the gold standard. I think that they are a really powerful, effective way of getting nutrients into your body, and you need the right juicer. And the reason the whole Hippocrates Health Institute was started was because Anne Wigmore was diagnosed with colon cancer, and one of the major things she did, which has kind of become the trademark of the Hippocrates Health Institute, was she juiced wheatgrass because she saw cats sucking on grass when they were ill. So I mean, and when you've got a craving or when you're hungry at the Hippocrates, if you're staying at the Hippocrates Health Institute, you go into the greenhouse and you juice some wheatgrass. It's pretty hardcore. But we can all do that in our own homes. You can order trays of wheatgrass from Aikenbury Sprouts, but you need the right juicer. So that's something that I can give you information on. But it's low sugar and it's high nutrition. Now, the thing that Nadia said to us was that she was doing all of this. She was making her juices, but she had a problem with her hip. And she suddenly remembered, because she did a heck of a lot of training in different disciplines of complementary therapies. And she said that she remembered that in Ayurvedic medicine, if you strip away the fiber, then that is the part of the food that supports the structure of your body. And so she feels that as well as juices, that smoothies absolutely have a place, because you get the fiber, you get all of the food. So my view is it's both. You need to have the juices, but you also, and your body will tell you, and also smoothies are a lot quicker to make and a lot quicker to wash up the juice machine. Although, one of the new juice machines I've looked at is quite quick to wash up. So she was encouraging you to make smoothies, and my only challenge with smoothies is that most people put lots of nuts and avocados and oils and denser foods in them. You make a more runny smoothie and you eat it like a raw soup with a spoon. Don't glug that down like a drink, because you're just putting loads of food into your stomach and asking your body to digest it. So I think both have a place, and they're both turbochargers for nutritional building. Okay.
Thank you, Gareth. So the question from Luke is, what are your thoughts on the coronavirus vaccine?
You're not allowed to ask me that. How dare you? I would just go back to my view that terrain-based models, I just meditate on that picture of Florence Nightingale and think that really building our terrain is the most important thing.
Okay. Any more questions?
I'm seeing 5 in the chat here.
Yep. Okay. I think that's it.
Is it?
Oh, it says, yeah, it's it. That's it.
Yep. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Well, that seems like a very appropriate picture to finish on.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Gareth. We started late, so we're finishing late, but it was, I think, very informative and very good session. So thanks, Gareth, first, and thanks everyone for joining.
And thank you very much to me, for everybody for joining, and Mikhail and Aisha for organising this, and all the work that you both do.
All right. Thank you, Gareth. Bye-bye.